Hey, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. I got a great guest coming on for you, Mr. Chris Jennings. And Chris and I are going to talk about the truth about sales and why people struggle in their sales process and how you don't have to be one of them. How do you fix that? And part of the key to sales success, we're going to talk about authentic communication and building personal confidence through. Don't miss this episode. Get a notebook out. Take copious notes. There's some great information in this. Speaking of great information, if you want to make your unpredictable revenue predictable, your sales revenue, let's say it's going up and down, or let's say that there's feast and famine going on, or you're not really just sure how to keep it predictable through the process. Remember, we have a math-based system that we can teach you on how you can dial in your sales revenue to any level, any percentage you want, and achieve that through those metrics. If you're interested in that, or you're interested in our technology on how you can build up personalized, relevant, meaningful, and automated follow-up that's really getting in there and building relationships so that you don't lose any sales that are going to be lost due to the fact that you can't follow up, or that you want to continue to keep top of mind and build relationships for ever and ever and ever, sparking more referrals and better buying frequency, let us know. Reach out to us by email at youmatter, youmatter, at ceosalesstrategies.com. All right, let's go bring Chris right in right now, and let's talk the truth about sales. Hey, Chris, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. Thanks so much for being here today. I really appreciate you being here.
Absolutely, Doug. It's my pleasure. I always enjoy getting to chat it up around sales strategies. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, Chris, why don't you tell people what you do? Let's set the frame for this whole thing.
Sure. So I'm just off the stage about an hour ago in front of a group of CEOs actually working on what sales systems should be inside of their organization. So I own a sales client retention, client expansion consulting company, and we do a variety of consulting, coaching, and training projects to help individuals and organizations have better communication with their clients, not sound like jerks while they're trying to improve their performance, and be methodical in how they go about improving sales and improving profitable sales based on the assumption that not every client's a great client, and finding the best clients that fit you perfectly, and walking away from those that don't. So I've been doing that for 30 years and still having a good time doing it.
I'm going to come back to this jerks thing that you mentioned because I think it's so important to have that conversation. By the way, folks, Chris and I were talking. You're based out of Laguna Beach in California, right?
Yes, sir.
And and he was teasing me a little bit because I said, well, maybe I'll come out in January since we're in we're in New Hampshire here, and I'll visit you and we can work on some stuff together. And he's like, yeah, that would be great, but I go to Hawaii in January, and
to escape the cold.
and he grew up in Connecticut, so I was like, geez, Chris, this is kind of like
yeah. My blood has thinned a lot over the years.
So. Yeah, you know what? As I get older, mine's thinning. I don't know if it's because I'm getting older or what, but we're headed down to Puerto Rico for the same reason.
Perfect.
Right. So, so let's come back to this thing. Oh, by the way, the company is chrisjenningsgroup.com, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's come back to this jerks thing, because most people, and I could make some jokes here about New York City and that type of thing, but I won't. But most people, they're not really abrupt or trying to be a jerk to somebody when they're selling. It's not the intention, but people do. Why do you think they do?
Well, I think the issue is they come across as selfish, really, and if they are putting their own self-centered needs above that of their customer or potential customer, then it's hard not to come across as manipulative and driving towards this outcome, which clearly benefits you, may or may not benefit your and help out your customer. And I think really there's certain areas in sales where you're required to be more assertive, and people have a hard time like threading the needle of appropriate assertiveness without coming across overly aggressive or overly self-serving.
So
And it's a very narrow window to pass through, right? To assert what's important to get out on the table without feeling like you're blowing people out of the water or coming across, like I said, overly self-serving. I think
so
that's
it's kind of that fine line between being assertive and arrogant.
yes, yeah. Assertive is fine. Appropriately assertive, having a good amount of self-respect, and also the same amount of respect for the person you're talking to, and being really comfortable in your own skin, not feeling like you're nervous to be around somebody you have to impress, not trying too hard. Like, and these are all the dynamics that go on. And one of my favorite comments that I ever got, somebody who bought Conversations Made Easy. He sent me this note and he said, I've been in sales for a year now, and I've spent the last year trying, and I have to rephrase it because it's probably not, fit for public consumption, the term you use, but I'm trying very hard not to sound like a complete jerk. And what reading and listening to your book is the first time I felt like I could actually say what I wanted to say without coming across in some obnoxious kind of way. And that's what I think most people struggle with.
So is it the key to sales success, personal confidence and authentic communication?
That would you can make a case for that. Uh, I might start with focus and discipline. Right, that's
Mhm.
usually where I start. If you're focused on what you want to get and you're disciplined about how you go about doing what you need to do, regardless of what's going on in the world around you, and you have good confidence in yourself, and you are an authentic communicator, then you are light years ahead of all the rest. And if you can not nail those four qualities that we talked about.
So I remember early on in my sales career, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because what I want CEOs to pay attention to, business owners paying attention to, what kind of people are you actually putting on your sales team? Are they
Sure.
like we're talking about,
Yeah.
or they're not, right? Because especially now, going into 2025, right? It's a different game than it was even in 2020, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And if we're not hiring the right balance between, I'll say, empathy and ego strength
Mm-hmm.
to accomplish what we're looking for, then we've made an actual bad hire, or a hire we shouldn't have, let's say. So, but I remember early on in my sales career, I always sold the most, Chris, when I was detached and I was just
Sure.
myself.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like sometimes 3x. Like,
Oh yeah.
I would have these killer sales months and I'd look back on the pattern and I'd be like, okay, well, I cared about the client, but I didn't care whether or not they bought per se. I wanted
Yeah.
just to detach from that and solve their issue or help them with their opportunity. Is
And you're not alone,
okay.
because anybody who hits their quota, let's say you hit your quota for the month by the 20th, the last 10 days of the month, that's going to be your best 10 days because you don't care anymore about hitting your quota. You're not doing this because you have to hit a number. You're out there doing this because you want to find more customers, but you're like you're saying, you're not attached to the outcome. I always say you have to have an abundance mentality. And if you have the choice between abundance mentality and desperation mentality.
Okay.
And if you come from a place of abundance, people recognize that. And if you come from a place of desperation, that's where all the obnoxious behavior comes from as well. That desperation and fear. Getting back to your comment though about making a bad hire, I would say, listen, let's assume that you're going to hire an average to good potential person, right?
Yeah.
Most companies. And they're not hiring bad people. They're hiring average to good, somewhere in that range. Not normally hiring the superstars, because there's just not that many superstars,
Right.
frankly. And then are you developing them once they come to your organization, or are you expecting everybody to have every skill completely dialed in and fine-tuned? Like if you think about quarterbacks in the NFL used to sit on the sidelines as an understudy for probably 5 years before they ever
Right.
started in a game.
Right.
And these days, like Caleb Williams, who got drafted out of SC, who's a great college quarterback, and he's getting, destroyed, trying to run the Bears, right now, and he hasn't had the time to develop. So I'm for company leaders. I rather than blaming your sales team for being bad hires or bad salespeople, I would want you to own your part in what are you doing to develop them.
Hmm. That's
Even if,
profound.
yeah, because even if it was a good person you brought in, good people have bad days and months and years and quarters. And have you really given it everything to develop the team that you have? And for the big companies, the Salesforces of the world, the Microsofts, et cetera, they're developing their team all the time. They don't leave any of that to chance. The 10 million, $100 million size companies, give or take, they don't spend as much time developing team members, unfortunately.
We're speaking with Mr. Chris Jennings of the Chris Jennings Group at chrisjenningsgroup.com. Uh, I find this fascinating because, like, I find that training a lot of times is even lacking in companies, and they're not training on, definitely not training on sales confidence most of the time, or authentic communication. They're focused on like objection handling, versus overcoming objections with confidence, so to speak, right? Or building
Yeah.
trust. They'll talk about maybe building trust in sales conversations, or maybe authenticity in sales conversations, but they're really not doing a lot to improving that sales conversion through relationship building and effective strategies for sales conversations. It's more
Hmm.
of a, here's our process here, follow this process. Okay, you got the process, kick you out, good luck. And,
Yeah.
if you don't hit your numbers by this time, we're going to put you on PIP, and then we're going to,
Yeah.
and then we're going to regurgitate this whole system over and over and grind out salespeople, versus doing what we would do anyways, Chris, when you're supposed to look for the ideal right fit buyer,
Hmm.
right? We,
Yeah.
we instead of us just throwing out lots of leads or lots of marketing leads and trying to nurture them up the sales funnel, why don't we go right after the sales qualified leads, or the sales ready leads, or the sales or the purchase order ready leads, right? Because we're
Hmm.
dialing it in. So,
Hmm.
do you think the truth about sales, about selling, that why most people or many people struggle is because of this lack of training, or is it because of personal confidence, or what are the attributes that you would say, listen, most people are struggling in sales for these X number of reasons?
Yeah. Yeah, I think people come from a place of fear a lot. There's, a lot of people who have financial instability in their household. So if their, financial house isn't in order and they need to get a bigger commission or whatever it is to, keep the lights going, they're coming from a place of fear. That turns into desperation. That influences the call. I think, unfortunately, most companies, like we are talking about, don't take the time to really develop their skills, their emotional intelligence. Gosh, if you just improved your emotional intelligence, by 10 points, you'd naturally become a better listener. You would naturally pay closer attention to things that your customers said, and you would zero in on things that are more important to them. But that doesn't, unfortunately, that doesn't happen as often. And they don't have the focus and discipline. I'm still going to start with focus and discipline. If somebody comes to me, and had somebody I'm working with recently who was making about 60,000 and needed to make at least 160,000 to keep the lights on at his house, 4 kids and
Yep.
all the things that go with it. And I said, hey, and he told me I'm making 60 calls a day. And I said, Brandon, good for you, man. That's a good call number. It's a very healthy call number. I said, there's what's going wrong in the calls. And he told me, and I said, here's what you got to do. You keep making you keep focused on the number of calls that you're making. Keep doing that. Send me a recording of every time it's not working out the way that it's supposed to. And every month, I want you to get about 5 or 6 calls and send me a sample of the problems that you're running into on the phone with customers. And he started doing that, and it flipped his results. And I said within a year's time, he went from a kind of a newbie, barely scratch, not even getting close to quota. He's climbing the ladder and probably turn out to be, one of the top rung salespeople in this company. But he's working at getting better, and he's very focused and disciplined about his activity.
And I agree with you. This focus and discipline to, constant and never ending improvement,
Hmm.
right? Because most people, what's the old joke? I heard this joke. It was like, you know, uh, parents are the two fathers are, back when you couldn't go in the waiting room. I mean, go into the room for delivery. Two
Delivery room, yeah,
fathers, the babies come out, and they're showing it, and one father goes, "Oh, look at my son or daughter, and they're going to be an attorney or a doctor or another one." And then um, the other father kind of looks at him and goes, "What about a salesperson?" Right? And it's like the whole room goes quiet and still,
right,
right? Because there's this negative connotation about, no, nobody's going to train their child to be a professional salesperson, right? Because
yeah,
but the reality is professional salespeople make more money than pretty much anybody on this earth.
yeah,
And most CEOs of companies at one time were salespeople.
yeah. Often.
Where does this fear come from?
Uh, well, I think there's a lack of confidence. I'd say a growing lack of confidence in our society. I think people feel judged a lot. I
Yep.
feel, and maybe some of it comes from because there is internally, they know they're not doing the work. Like most of the people who call and ask for my help, they're not doing their 60 calls a day, or even if it's 6 calls a day, it doesn't really matter. There is a requisite amount of activity that everybody should be doing. So any team that I'm coaching, I'm always going to come up with a guideline of activity with at least top 5 activities, and we're going to figure out how many of these things should you be doing with what frequency. Webinars, lunch and learns, referrals, calls, trade shows, whatever the activities are. And then, so the question number one is, are you doing those activities that we've agreed to? Do you know what those are? And if you know what they are and you're doing them and you're still not hitting your numbers, then there's a problem with the quality of the conversations. And so it's always, we have a term that we call go live. Go live dialogue is a measure of live conversation that a salesperson would have with their customers or prospects. The average salesperson gets only 45 minutes to an hour a day of actual go live dialogue because they're doing everything through email.
Yep.
Goal should be 4 hours a day. And when we get people doing 4 hours a day go live time, they either start hitting their numbers, or if they're not hitting their numbers, then we know it's a quality issue in the conversation. And then we coach the quality by recording calls and scrimmages and uh, all of the different practice tools that are gonna get somebody. I heard a great line earlier. I want to repeat it while I'm still remembering it. So somebody was telling me a fellow sports fan has got kids in competitive sports, and he said, "Gosh, one of the coaches was telling him the other day that um, trophies are are earned on the practice field. You just collect them on the games." And they're doing the work. So if you want to get a trophy, you want to be top level, you're practicing, right? You're working on skill development. And you just collect those at the games. You've already earned the right because you've done the work. And you got to ask yourself, am I doing work outside of going to a sales call to develop my skills or not? Or do I require that of my team? Do we run practices as a team? Do we record calls? Do we video ourselves? So many things we can do.
I love the 45-minute to 4 hours because just the activity of talking to more people,
Yeah.
right? People forget. I think salespeople forget who they're selling to. Like, they're not selling to titles.
Right.
There's an actual person that has the
Yeah.
title, and that
Mm-hmm.
person has desires, wants, fears, seeking a business return on investment, a personal return on investment through
Sure.
everything that we're doing. But I have found that people who are selling, and it doesn't matter whether they're just, sales professionals or they're solo entrepreneurs or founder-led sales companies, or, even in CEO meetings, Chris, I see the same thing. It's like people don't talk to people.
Yeah.
They go to networking events and they'll sit over in the corner, or they'll talk to one person and they'll stay focused on that one person for the hour and a half networking meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what I'm hearing you say is you'll get more success as long as your conversational skills, your strategic conversational skills and communication skills are decent.
Yeah.
You're going to get far more out of that human to human connection than you ever will not having that. So just the fact that we more than, more than 4x that, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
that FaceTime,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
maybe, what was it, Apple who created FaceTime? Maybe
Yeah.
they, the name actually meant something. That FaceTime is going to breed more relationships on a deeper level, which lead to more sales anyways. It's just the way
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah. And more practice. If you're getting 45 minutes in a day, you're more cautious and careful with everything that you say. If you're getting 4 hours a day of dialogue, go live
Right.
dialogue with your customers and your prospects, you're getting a lot more reps, a lot more at bats. So you have a natural flow to the conversations that you have. And because you're getting so much activity, you're not as worried about the fact that, I need a sale out of this person, because we've had clients track the numbers and they'll get 36 minutes of total go live dialogue for an entire week inside sales teams. And all they're doing is emailing.
Inside sales teams.
Inside sales teams. And all they're doing is emailing quotes back and forth. That's all they're doing. That's what ends up happening. And they've devalued the importance of talking to people. And I get it too. Like you've had a lot of customers for a long time saying, "Oh, don't call me, just email me." Right? I understand that people say that. That doesn't make it the right thing to do. Just because the customer tells you to only email them, the point of email, texting, LinkedIn, and every other electronic tool that we have is to create a live dialogue, not to replace a live dialogue. So
Yeah.
that's
Not just studies, just intuitively, studies show this, but personalized, meaningful communication is far more it converts far better than none.
yeah,
Right. And
yeah,
so why not send that email and then follow up with a phone call? Hey, Chris, I wanted to see if you got that email.
yeah,
Right. And start the dialogue and and build the relationship. Geez, Chris, in a personal relationship, can you imagine like I watch what the kids are doing today, and I call them kids because I'm older and my daughters are in their early 20s.
hmm,
And it's like they're not talking like we used to,
no, yeah,
right? And it's like some of them have said they don't even call their friend before they text their friend because there's this commonality that you might be interrupting one and they get upset at you. And I'm like, hello. Like what?
yeah,
Like, right. So, and I'm not trying to, be demeaning to a particular age group. I'm finding this across the spectrum of people that they're
agreed.
thinking that because it's convenient and I don't have to necessarily answer the question, or I might not know the question, or I might not know what's going to come up, they're sort of protecting themselves using all this electronic medium.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I had a CEO named Colleen in the program earlier today, and she said it's just easier to send an email, and that's what people are doing. They're choosing the easier, softer way, if you will, and they're not getting the results that they could. And again, people being afraid of upsetting somebody because you called them is a statement, And like you said, it's not just younger people. I see it in all demographics where people are over relying on email. And the reality is if you are the one that still calls, that still tries to see people in person, that still sets up your Zoom meetings, that in my opinion, you are demonstrating an interest in that other party.
Yes.
And if the other thing I'll say too, if with your individual customers, you're kind of if you capture the available time for live dialogue, you're sort of edging out your competitors because your customers won't have time to give everybody, an hour and here and an hour there. They'll just do more work with just you, and you'll slowly edge out your competitors. So, but you have to be intentional about your activities and how you go about setting up your week, etc.
We're speaking with Mr. Chris Jennings at chrisjenningsgroup.com. And my mind is a bit blown here, Chris, because the more I think about this, you and I, in our journey of our sales, this was just natural. Like, this is what you did,
Yeah.
right? And, believe it or not, folks, not Chris necessarily, but myself, there was a time before the internet even existed,
Oh yeah.
right? It existed in the military system, but it didn't exist for us.
Yeah.
And so how did you build a sales career? You had to do what we're talking about. And I
Yeah.
think what people have thought is this technology is, uh, going to completely take away the human need of connection. And I don't know if anybody's ever had this, but I mean, you might have built a friend over LinkedIn or built a friend over whatever, Instagram or,
Hmm.
whatever, Twitter, whatever. And you're having a communication and it's going back and forth and going back and forth, going back and forth and goes for a long time. And then you actually meet the person and it's like, this person isn't somebody I even want to talk
Yeah.
to. Right.
Right.
But you spent 30 hours of your life trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Right. Where if you just had that phone call connection or
Sure.
a live meeting like we're doing here on our podcast,
Hmm.
then you figure that out. So think about it. How much time are you wasting? Email was never designed to replace human connection. It was designed to be a fast, quick medium. It was like a fax,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
Those of you who don't know what a fax is, it was something you put a piece of paper in a machine and it sent it to another machine and it had written language or diagrams or something. It was a communication tool, you know? Um, so Chris, I love what you're talking about, even though it's blowing my mind a bit that people are still not. I mean, what you're talking about is focus, discipline, and regimen, if you will,
Hmm.
to the successful principles that have always been the key to sales success and always been the keys to personal confidence, which is getting in there, understanding, having more information, adjusting that data so that, you get the feedback. It's kind of like the guy who wants to go ask the girl out or a girl out, but just like, well, she might reject me. She might do this, might do that. I don't know if my line's right. I don't know if my clothing's right, my hair, okay, all of that stuff. And they build up this big persona of,
Yeah.
I'm not going to make it. When if they just got in and involved, they learn things like, okay, well, maybe my shirt color wasn't the right color because more women are saying, I love that, pink shirt on you versus that green shirt, right? So you wear the pink shirt, it's very simple. And when you're wearing the pink shirt, your confidence goes up and you ask, and now that you have more confidence, you're coming across more confident, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the key to authentic communication when you're not being arrogant, as you said, when you're being assertive, but you're not
Hmm.
being inauthentic in the process. And
Yeah.
that itself, Chris, I've actually had CEOs say this to me. They will, you will, I would go into their office and they would challenge me out of the gate. Like, just see if I had the mettle to be able to deal with their organization.
Hmm.
And I would respectfully challenge them back. They
Hmm.
would be like, well, we want to, we're converting at 25% already. Why would we need you? And I'd say, well, how do you know that's not supposed to be 38%?
Right.
Right? Something as simple as that. And I wasn't being arrogant. I was just being
Yeah.
like curious, is 25% actually where it's supposed to be? How do we, maybe it
Is
should
that
be
a good number?
38%,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's confidence, though. They view
Sure.
that confidence is sexy and attractive.
Mhm. Yeah, and definitely there's a lack of confidence in our society. I see it more and more in the workforce. So uh, there's I think a lot of people that I had this group out of DC that I was working with, and you couldn't have found a brighter, more on top of it group of people. I mean, these were complete industry experts, brilliant, articulate, and they were so afraid of their customers, and they tiptoed on eggshells, and they didn't want to overstep any boundaries, and they were always they were playing not to lose. It was the prevent defense, which is my least favorite thing in sports. When a team gets a lead because of the way they played, and then they stop playing that way so they could drag it out and hopefully be there to win at the end. And I hate the prevent defense. I can't stand it when a team changes their strategy. But that's how these guys were. And it was like anything they got from a client, they were afraid to lose it. And you can't play not to lose. You have to constantly play to win. My rule of thumb with customers, with anybody, is tell them the truth. Just tell them the truth. And if the truth is they think 25% is a good conversion ratio, but they haven't done the exploration to find out if 38% is possible, then there's a chance that they're missing out on a 13% increase in their conversion rate, which is huge. And to that point, I've never met a company that didn't have another 10 points in them.
Yeah.
I've never met a company that was already at 25 that couldn't be at 35 and so on. And and I think great leaders always stay open to a better way to do things. And I think, but that means you're probably a confident leader. Like a confident leader would welcome you into their office and go, Doug, we've done well, but I want to make sure there's not a better way to do it, and I'm open to hearing what you got to say. So, but it takes some confidence. And a lot of sales leaders, I think, are afraid of being found out, that maybe they don't have all the answers,
Yep.
as opposed to surrounding themselves with great resources that would help them, just continuously elevate their game.
And that is a key in life, never mind just in sales success.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you'll find the notable people that we, Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is how he publicly comes out and says, "I'm not a self-made man. You all helped make me to
Yeah.
be Arnold Schwarzenegger," and I couldn't do it without other people, right? And
No.
so it's the key to life. So, Chris, people want to get a hold of you. They're like, this guy's pretty darn smart. I think he can help my organization, or he can help me. What is the best mode of communication for you, and how would you like people to get a hold of you?
Yeah, they should just then go to chrisjenningsgroup.com, and on our website they'll see we've made some offers for listeners to the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. They could pick up one of our books or both of our books. I think we have we just cover the shipping, and we'll shoot you the book. Or there's a place to fill out and say, hey, I'd like to speak to Chris or the team about XYZ subject, and I promise you we will for sure get back to you. And that is probably the best way to get a hold of us.
Awesome.
ChrisJenningsGroup.com. Yeah. And
Awesome. And
and by the way, we have a lot of tools and resources. I figured at some point, Doug, I'm not going to be doing this. I don't know how many years I got left in me. God willing, I'll go another 10 or 20. But at some point I'm not doing this. There's a lot of tools and resources that I'm leaving behind whenever I move on to whatever the next phase of my existence is or non-existence is. My legacy, I would like to feel like I've left a lot of tools behind. That's part of why I wrote the books. That's why I read them on Audible. And so you'll get a little firsthand Chris Jennings tonality if that's appealing to you.
Well, I have a feeling, Chris, you and I are going to be talking 20 or 30 years from now anyways. And, we'll still be young looking and as dapper and good looking as ever. But so I really appreciate you being here on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. And folks, check out the website, chrisjenningsgroup.com. Everything will be in the show notes for you. And Chris, once again, thanks so much for being here today. I'm very, very grateful.
It's my absolute pleasure, Doug. I really enjoyed the conversation, and all those salespeople out there, all those entrepreneurs out there. I am rooting for you. All right, you are my team that I root for, and I know there's going to be challenging moments, but we're all rooting for you, Doug and I both, and wishing you all the best.
All right. I love what he said about instead of 45 minutes of live time, how about let's make it 4 hours of live time? In other words, we're talking to people 4 hours a day, not 45 minutes a day. Think about this, just this concept of building communication and talking to one another. It builds relationships. Relationships build business. This is how you sell more. Connection, authentic communication and connection. And what he said around focus and discipline, having that regiment every single day where you're focused on the things that matter, things that move you forward. I'm going to come back to you matter just in a moment. I want you to please understand that your sales confidence translates into growth, translates into people looking and saying, man, I want to be around this person because they're confident. And I trust this person because they're confident. And when you're able to have that confidence, you ask better quality questions. And sometimes those questions that are the hard ones that people don't even dare to ask, those are getting the eyebrows to go up. And those are getting people to lean in and say, tell me more. So please listen to this episode again, take notes, summarize these things, take your data points that you're learning from deals you win, deals you lose, and build your career based on the information versus being subjective. I think this worked because of this. No, understand what objectively the truth is, and there you can make adjustments and optimize. I told you I'd come back to you matter. We named our system Vibitno, Vibitno. You can get more information at vibitno.com. This is a personalized, meaningful, and relevant follow-up system that's automating your process. The reason we named it Vibitno is because in a Slavic language, it means you matter. And that's how we picked the name, because you matter. And I'm assuming the people that you're trying to build relationships with and do business back and forth together, that they matter to you as well. So if you're interested in that, or you're interested in making your revenue, your sales revenue, making it go from unpredictable to predictable based on whatever you want it to be, and you're interested in our sales-based mathematical metrics formula, reach out to us at YouMatter, YOUMATTER, at ceosalesstrategies.com, and just put in the podcast episode name that if you want, or say, hey, CEO Sales Strategies, I want to know more about unpredictable revenue, or if you want to just shorten it up, unpredictable revenue to predictable revenue, or if you want to shorten it up on that, put Vibitno, Vibitno, if you're interested in the follow-up. All right, that's it. As always, go play win-win. Go out and sell something. Sell a lot of it. Don't discount. How do you not discount? Make sure the value's there. People pay for value, and that's what they want. Until next time, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast saying, to your success.